Hi, it's me. Welcome to another new ID overview for Limbus Company. This update has introduced two brand new triple-lot IDs for Season 7. The first and simpler of the two is the House of Spiders, the Pinky Apprentice Sinclair, a brand new primarily Poise ID who also inflicts some bleed. And the second is Lobotomy E.G.O Lamp Gregor, who is the very first ID that slots into both the burn and sinking archetypes. Both of them have a lot of interesting things going on, so let's jump right into their kits and go over them one by one. The House of Spiders, the Pinky Apprentice Sinclair, is actually a really interesting ID to pilot. First off, his main passive gives him Poise potency based on his Pride Resonance, giving a minimum of 2 since you need 2 to activate the passive, and a maximum of 4. Then at the end of combat, he gains 1 Poise count if he has 20 or more Poise potency to help with his consistency. And there's a good reason to want to activate this every turn. If he has more than 25 Poise at the end of the turn, he'll convert up to 15 of it into Moonlit Azure Blade for the next turn, and this effect does not decay at all. It stacks up to 20 and gives 2 shield per stack, plus increases his critical damage by 1% per stack, meaning it's a pretty important factor in his overall effectiveness. As long as you can keep your Poise above 20, this is effectively 20% more damage at all times. In addition to that, if he doesn't use any attack skills at combat start, he'll heal 5 SP and gain 1 slash power up for the next turn. His defense skill is a very integral part of gaining SP and Poise for him, so this is arguably the more important part of his passive, and since his defense skill is clashable, it's actually great for his SP. Lastly, his support passive gives 5 SP and 5 shield to the fastest ally if they start combat with a defense skill equipped. There are a lot of modern IDs that want to use their defense skill, so having a support passive that can accelerate their SP gain early on is incredibly useful. The shield part is kinda useless though. His defense skill, aptly just called Defend, is a 3-13 rolling Pride clashable guard. Its main purpose is to give a buttload of Poise every turn, being 8 potency and 2 count whenever it is present at combat start. This is an insane amount of Poise gained per turn when combined with his passive, but it also has another property that it becomes a different skill at 25 or more Poise. Swerve is a 4-14 rolling Pride Evade that gains a huge amount of Poise count at combat start. On top of that, it also gives up to 2 crit damage up every turn when evading, and gives additional shield equal to his Moonlit Azure Blade. It has been a long time since we got a new ID that had an evade, and this is a really solid one to boot. You'll want to use it at low Poise count in order to not run out of Poise, but this ID absolutely has no issue maintaining his own Poise otherwise. Chain Strike is a 3-11 rolling slash gloom skill with 2 coins that can become up to a 3-15 if he has enough Poise. It also gives him a good amount of haste once he reaches his maximum effectiveness at 25 Poise. His skills gain a very solid amount of Poise potency and count, with this being the best skill for gaining it aside from his defense skills. As long as you continue to activate his passive every turn, you should be at no risk of running out of Poise during any battle. Nameless Slash is a 6-16 rolling slash Pride unfocused volley with 2 coins and 3 attack weight that can become up to an 8-18 based on his Poise. The skill is notably always Poise count neutral since every hit gives him 1 Poise count, which is why it's so unlikely for him to run out in the first place. This is his primary skill for damage, being able to reuse the second coin up to twice based on if it lands a crit, and if he has 10 Moonlit Azure Blade. While unfocused volleys are a bit awkward in fights with a lot of enemies, they are insanely powerful against single targets, and the fact that it is count neutral is insanely good for this ID overall. False Star Slayer is an 8-22 rolling slash wrath skill with a single coin that can become up to a 13-32 based on his own Poise and Moonlit Azure Blade. On top of that, it gains 1 attack weight for every 10 Moonlit Azure Blade he has, capping out at 3. This skill deals a very high amount of damage thanks to having a high critical hit modifier, as well as dealing 25% of the coin's final damage as bonus slash damage on heads hit with a crit. On top of that, if there aren't enough targets for the attack weight, he deals extra damage for every excess attack weight, up to 100%. The coin also becomes unbreakable at 20 Moonlit Azure Blade, but that is unlikely to matter with a skill that rolls this high. I would advise waiting to use this skill until you've already built up your Moonlit Azure Blade in order to maximize its potential effectiveness, but if you need to use it early, it does give a large amount of Poise and can help get to the high amounts of Moonlit Azure Blade that you want to use it at. The fact that it consumes half the stack is mostly irrelevant, since by the time you have Moonlit Azure Blade, you're basically always going to gain around 10 after the end of the turn anyways. All in all, it is just a fantastic skill 3. This ID is incredibly solid in almost every way. However, if there is one thing it sucks at, it's fueling Sinclair's ego. As of right now, he doesn't fuel more than one affinity of any of his own ego, which is kinda unfortunate, and more often than not, that one affinity is going to be Wrath, which is his skill 3. However, he does fuel 2 of the necessary affinities for both thoracalgias, which he doesn't necessarily need himself, like at all, but helps the rest of the Poise team to maintain their consistency. Poise teams nowadays are less about focusing a specific damage type and more about just stacking the best possible Poise IDs into a single team. That said, him being pure slash does mean that he synergizes well with a Blade Lineage team core. You can't run all 6, which is a common theme for Poise IDs this season, but you can run both Yi Sang and Merceau, as well as either Don Quixote or Faust in the last slot. When it comes to Don Quixote and Faust, you should only run one or the other from Blade Lineage, then use their Index ID for the other unit if you decide to use the Blade Lineage core at all. The Index IDs are just better overall when it comes to damage, and you will likely want both of them, so it's a good idea to consider other cores than Blade Lineage. Faust is rather necessary for the team though, since she does bring along the better of the 2 thoracalgias, and your best method of healing in a Poise team in the same E.G.O. The Full Stop duo is always at the top of the list for Poise teams. They deal a ton of damage and support each other very well, plus when Heathcliff leaves the field you can substitute in an 8th ID that also supports the team well. The other thoracalgia is also really nice to have for the rest of your Poise units, so bringing along Butler or Drifting Blade Ryoshu will be incredibly nice just for that purpose. Butler deals great AoE damage, and Drifting Blade's free attack and Sin generation every turn makes for an insanely powerful DPS in any team. She Faust is also a really nice idea to support Ryoshu specifically, since her Sin affinities help to fuel thoracalgia as well. Lord of Hongyan Honglu is also a great unit in a Poise team when put next to Drifting Blade, and you can bring along the Heisho C IDs as well as Family Hierarch candidate Ishmael for a very solid offensive team core that has a variety of damage types. Leaving 1 or 2 of them on the bench would also be nice, since Ishmael likes to retreat, as does Full Stop Heathcliff. We also now have enough IDs that are both Poise and Bleed to make a competent hybrid of the 2. Pequod Heathcliff and Pirate Gregor both pair really nicely with this ID, and while maintaining a bleed stack is going to be a bit luck-based, it is not beyond the realm of possibility, thanks to Heathcliff being able to inflict 10 bleed count in a single hit. Lastly, Pequod Ishmael is really good in any Poise team, since she allows Poise IDs to gain extra Poise by using their skill 1 additional time each turn, and that extra skill is great for additional damage and Sin generation in any team. Up next, we have Lobotomy E.G.O Lamp Gregor, who is a much more complicated ID, but rather easy to pilot nonetheless. He focuses around the new status called Lamp, which stacks up to 8 and gives him up to 4 bind each turn based on how much he has. Once it reaches the maximum stack, it then gives him 10 aggro to his leftmost slot, and inflicts the highest HP enemy with 3 dazzle on the next turn, then is fully consumed. Dazzle is a panic-changing effect that also increases the amount of damage the enemy takes by up to 10% based on their current sinking and burn. Enemies who have low morale or panic while they have Dazzle will gain bind and a significant amount of offense level down, making it really easy to win clashes against them. However, if they don't have SP, they just gain 2 defense level down for a small damage boost against the target, which is arguably more effective. He gains 1 lamp at the start of every turn. As a result of it giving him a ton of bind, which by the way his speed range is only 1 to 4, making him already the slowest ID in the game, this ID would really struggle to redirect attacks if not for the fact that he has a passive which allows him to redirect attack skills regardless of speed. To reinforce this, he is also incapable of having his speed changed by outside effects, and if he were to gain haste, he would instead gain 1 clash power up once per turn. On top of that, he also gains defense level up for every ally that wears E.G.O gear, and gains pierce damage up when an ally dies once per turn. Him being effectively unable to redirect defense skills will be a little awkward in certain fights, but being able to redirect anything else at any time makes him a really powerful addition for most teams. On top of that, having an ID that wants to be slow makes it so that you're incentivized not to bring along allies who inflict bind, so keep that in mind. He also gains Lamp from your Gloom Resonance thanks to his passive, up to 3 per turn at combat start. He will heal 5 SP at combat start if an enemy has Dazzle, which reveals his other main purpose as an SP support ID. At the next turn, if his passive activated, he grants Guardian of the Forest to the earliest deployed ally who isn't himself, doesn't already have it, and isn't in a panic state. Guardian of the Forest activates on skill use before disappearing, healing 4 SP if the skill is positive coin, or granting 2 offense level up at max SP, or losing 8 SP if it's a minus coin skill, but it can't bring SP below negative 40. This is really easy to manipulate in a sinking team, making him really good at speeding up SP gain for the entire team. Just be sure you aren't applying it to minus coin units since they tend to not need it most of the time. Lastly, his support passive activates based on Wrath Resonance and gives both aggro and blunt damage up to the earliest deployed ally. It's a nice boost for a variety of bulkier IDs, however its best application is in Burn due to the Resonance type and they don't have a lot of tanky IDs. That said, blunt damage is blunt damage, and it should provide some benefit regardless. The last method he has to gain Lamp is through his defense skill. The Wick of Burned Feathers is a 3-13 rolling Gloom clashable guard, and will trade up to 8% of his max HP to gain Lamp to its maximum value. It also gives haste to other allies based on how much bind he has. The fact that this always maxes out his Lamp means that this guard is what allows him to activate Dazzle in burn teams. I would say it's debatable whether or not this is worth it, though it is free extra damage for burn units. It's just that they would appreciate Guardian of the Forest more usually, and in sinking teams you'll never really need to use this skill. Intense Stare 0 Range is a 3-11 rolling Pierce Rat skill with 2 coins that can become up to a 3-15 based on the sinking and burn on the target, his speed compared to the target's, and if the target has Dazzle. It also gives him Bind next turn, which he probably won't need considering Lamp already does that. Every single one of his skills has a conditional based on his speed and Dazzle, requiring him to be 3 or more speed slower, at exactly 1 speed, or the target having Dazzle. It's really easy to be at 1 speed and for the target to have Dazzle, so this conditional will be fulfilled more often than not. Destroy the Visible with the Invisible is a 3-15 rolling Pierce Gloom skill with 4 coins that can become up to a 3-19 based on the target's sinking and burn. The speed conditional this time around gives 2 clash power, which really helps this skill since it isn't super high clashing otherwise. The first 2 coins deal a bunch of additional blunt damage based on how much damage they've dealt, and when it comes to his infliction, he has no issue being consistent for burn. That said, his sinking infliction is definitely subpar across the board, despite being almost neutral on this skill and actually neutral on the next. If you want to use him in a sinking team, it'll be good to have effects like Blue Sand and Echoes of the Manor, so as not to have him hold back the rest of the team in scenarios where your sinking count is a little low. Salvation for those enchanted by the Lamp is a 5-17 rolling Pierce Pride skill with 3 coins that can become up to a 5-23 based on the target's sinking and burn, as well as his own speed and if the target has Dazzle. His speed conditional this time around also gives a flat 40% damage bonus, as well as all of the coins becoming unbreakable and the skill gaining 3 clash power up if the target has Dazzle specifically. It's his only skill that isn't sinking count negative, and the final hit deals a ton of extra damage if the target has Dazzle or is on low HP, plus deals Gloom damage by 80% of the coin's damage if the target has Dazzle as well, and that's an uncapped effect. This skill by itself deals a ridiculous amount of damage, however it also gives 1 plus coin boost next turn if it kills the target, or if the target has exactly 3 Dazzle, which will always be the case on the turn it's inflicted. Plus coin boost turns his other skills into much more reliable ones, specifically his skill 2, and you'll want to trigger that effect as often as you can if you're using this skill. Much like Sinclair, this ID is not great at fueling his own E.G.O. He's best at fueling Unbrilliant Glory, which is pretty nice since it's both burn and gives him a bunch of defensive bonuses. That said, you're unlikely to be able to get that E.G.O nowadays. At least there are a lot of sinking E.G.O this ID can equip. Bygone Days helps him a lot to lean into his role as an SP support, and the passive helps him to be a little less inconsistent with sinking count if he manages to land a kill. Solemn Lament is also pretty good as a mass damage option. Not only is the E.G.O itself really powerful, but using it will basically give him 1 attack power up for the rest of the fight, since this ID inflicts bind to himself almost always, and the passive gives him that attack power up if he has a negative effect. The additional damage when attacking a panicked enemy is also really good in a sinking team. Lastly, Christmas Nightmare helps by inflicting offense and defense level down to all enemies once you actually cause a panic or stagger, and is your best option if you lack Solemn Lament for the He slot. Despite having a lot of synergy with sinking, he's probably best suited to a burn team due to just being more consistent with his status, and still being able to inflict dazzle by using his defense skill. Guardian of the Forest is still really good though, so IDs like Dawn Office Sinclair will be great partners for him just to be able to sometimes trigger Gloom Resonance. Ring Yi Sang can fulfill the same purpose despite not technically being a burn ID as well. Other burn units that can provide Gloom include Lord of Hongyan Honglu, who works really well alongside a burn team nowadays thanks to the pair of Heisho-Yo IDs in Sinclair and Heathcliff. The three of them deal a lot of additional damage and are really good for burn teams in general, and you can use someone like Heisho Ryoshu to immediately swap out in order to get free skill 3s with the other Heishos. Any other great burn ID is going to pair well with him. Liu Yi Sang, Liu Ishmael, Sank East Don Quixote, Thumb Merceau, Thumb Sinclair, and Ardor Blossom Star Faust all work really well as burn units, and work well alongside this ID in addition to that. Faust gives him an extra defense level just by existing, the Lius and the Sank are good for damage, and Yi Sang gives more SP support, and the Thumbs are just really strong IDs in general. Magic Bullet Otis also works really well with this unit, not only synergizing because she's wearing E.G.O, but Dark Flame is one of the best effects to make burn more reliable in boss fights specifically. I wouldn't say it's required, but along with the E.G.O of the same name, it will result in a drastic increase in your overall damage per turn. Pequod Ishmael is also pretty solid in burn teams, being capable of allowing any ID to inflict burn more consistently, and having an extra skill 1 each turn is just really nice for sin generation and damage. You may assume that Leah Rodian would also work well with him, and I think she definitely does, but it's probably better to just run Sword Sharpened with Tears Rodian, even in a burn team, in order to have an additional way to trigger Gloom Resonance, and while her sinking infliction isn't good enough to fully sustain a team on her own, the SP reduction is really good in burn specifically. You'll also be using this ID in sinking for the record, or Diechi Rodian in case you don't have everything from Volpurgisnacht. Sinking teams will want you to use Echoes of the Manor and Blue Sand in order to make up for his subpar sinking infliction, so Butlers Otis and Faust, as well as Ujat Otis, are going to want to be included in your team as well. One ID with subpar infliction isn't bad enough to not bring Jung's Office Ishmael, who is undoubtedly one of the best sinking units available when it comes to dealing damage. That said, if you're worried about the stack dropping, you could also bring Molar Ishmael for her much higher sinking infliction. Beyond that, any other sinking ID that is even semi-competent with inflicting sinking is going to be really good for the team. This includes Solemn Lament and Spicebush Yi Sang, Wild Hunt Heathcliff, Diechi Honglu, and Heisho Don Quixote. As long as you don't bring a second unit who struggles to maintain the count like the index IDs, you'll find that this Gregor is not going to be a major hindrance to your strategy, and will be a big increase to the effectiveness of your overall sinking team. And that's about all I have to say about them. The IDs we've been getting this season have all been really interesting in how they play, and these two are no exception. On top of that, they've all been really reliable IDs, and so this is a great banner to pull in if you feel like doing that. I have both of them in my company if you'd like to try borrowing them before that, or just want to use them without waiting to shard them for a whole week. Be sure to like and subscribe as it helps me out a lot, and let me know what you think about these IDs in the comments below, as I always like to see other people's opinions on them. Thank you for watching my video, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you again soon.